This video is not just any ordinary video, it's a game changer. What I'm about to share with you are secrets that are not talked about nearly enough. Tips that could completely transform your muscle growth journey. These aren't just basic pointers you've heard 1,000 times before. No, these are the hidden gems that the pros swear by, and they're here for you, right in this very moment, to supercharge your progress. I've taken everything I've learned about muscle development, everything I've seen working for myself and others, and packed it all into one powerful, impactful video that will make you wonder why you didn't know this stuff sooner. By the end, you'll be thinking, how did I miss this? This makes so much sense. Trust me, your next workout is going to be on an entirely different level after you incorporate these tips. So without further ado, let's dive in. First, let's address something that may have caught your attention right from the thumbnail. You're probably thinking, what could he possibly mean? You might be a bit confused, maybe even skeptical, but stick with me. This is important. The lat pull-down, one of the most commonly done exercises in the gym. It's great, no doubt about it. But here's the problem, the flaw that most people overlook. And it's a big one. Are you ready for this? The issue arises if you're too tall or if the machine isn't high enough. I want you to really think about this for a second. If you're sitting there, too tall for the machine, or if the machine's not high enough to allow your arms to stretch completely as you bring the bar back up to the starting position, you're missing out on some serious gains. I'm talking about missing half of the exercise's effectiveness. That's right, you're pulling the bar down, squeezing it, which is great, but the stretch, when you bring your arms back up, it's crucial, and if you're not getting that full stretch, you're doing yourself a disservice. I'm sure some of you are thinking, wait, what's the big deal about that stretch? Let me break it down for you. The stretch is the key. The full stretch is what drives the growth in your back. I'm sure you've heard the phrase, muscle growth is all about the stretch, and for good reason. That's the part of the exercise that forces your muscles to lengthen, to fight against resistance in a way that leads to serious muscle development. If you can't fully stretch out your lats because you're either too tall or the machine isn't high enough, you're missing out on one of the most important parts of the movement. So what do you do if you find yourself in this situation? The solution is simple, yet incredibly effective. Sit on the floor. Yes, you heard me right. Get on the floor underneath the machine. This allows you to extend your arms fully during the movement. You'll be able to feel the difference immediately. You'll get a much greater range of motion. And that range of motion is key for maximizing growth. If you're super tall, this is a game changer. It's the secret to unlocking the full potential of the lat pull-down. And if you're using a machine that allows for that full stretch while sitting on the seat, no need to sit on the floor. Stick with the seat, but make sure you're getting that full stretch at the top. Now this concept applies not just to lat pull-downs, but also to pull-ups. If you want to really build your back, it's all about maximizing that weighted stretch. Whether it's rows, pull-ups, or lat pull-downs, don't forget this principle. The stretch at the top of the movement is what drives the real muscle growth. So remember, it's not just about pulling down, it's about pulling down and stretching. This small adjustment could be the difference between plateauing and blowing past your current limits. You've got to milk that stretch. Let's move on to tip number 2. This one is a habit that will drastically improve your performance, and it's something almost everyone overlooks. It applies to basically every unilateral exercise you do, meaning any exercise where you work one side of your body at a time. Here's the golden rule. Always start with your less dominant side. I know this sounds like common sense, but trust me, so many people start with their dominant side. They don't think about it, and they don't realize that doing so can actually lead to muscle imbalances over time. It doesn't matter if you don't think you have any imbalances, your less dominant side is always a little weaker, and that's exactly why you should prioritize it. You want to prevent any imbalances from developing in the first place, and you want to maximize your performance across the board. Starting with your less dominant hand forces you to focus more on that side, and that's the key to correcting imbalances before they become a bigger problem. There's a psychological aspect to this too. You're going to put more effort into your weaker side when it's the first side you work. You'll be more mindful of the movement, more focused on how you're performing the exercise. On the other hand, if you start with your dominant side, you're likely to breeze through the exercise, and you're not going to give your weaker side the attention it needs. It's a habit that will pay off in the long run, and it's an investment into your future performance and gains. So, make it a point to always start with your less dominant hand. It may feel strange at first, but it'll soon become second nature, and you'll notice the results before you know it. Now, here's tip number 3, and this one is a big one, and something I can't stress enough. It applies to every single exercise you do, no exceptions. The lowering phase of the lift is just as important as the lifting phase. I know you've heard this before, but let me ask you, do you actually follow this principle? Because most people don't. A lot of people either let the weight drop like a stone, which completely takes away from the effectiveness of the movement, or they try to lower the weight super slowly, which, while good in theory, isn't always the best way to go. The key is control. The key is to lower the weight at a pace that challenges you, but without rushing or forcing it. You want to be in control of the movement at all times. It's about finding that sweet spot between too fast and too slow. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine you're trying to move a fridge from a standing position to the ground, but you're doing it all by yourself. How would you go about it? Would you just tip the fridge and let it crash to the ground? Sure, that would get the job done, but it would completely destroy the fridge in the process. That's like letting the weight fall during the lowering phase. You're getting the movement done, but you're destroying your gains in the process. Now, let's say you try a different approach. Instead of letting the fridge drop, you try to lower it super slowly. But after a few minutes, your back is cramping and you're out of breath. You finally get the fridge on the ground, but you're exhausted from trying to control it too much. This is the opposite extreme, and it's also not ideal. The right way to lower the fridge would be to control it without taking forever to do so. You want to find that sweet spot, the perfect balance, where you're still in control, but you're not overexerting yourself. This is the same principle that applies when you're lowering the weight during your lifts. You don't want to let it fall uncontrollably, but you also don't want to drag it out unnecessarily. Just find that controlled, steady pace, and your gains will thank you. Next up, we've got tip number 4. If you're doing lateral raises, you've probably been doing them wrong without even realizing it. Most people perform the lateral raise in a standard fashion, standing up straight and raising their arms to the side. This isn't wrong, but there's a way to make it so much more effective. When you do a unilateral lateral raise, instead of just standing there like you normally would, try leaning to the side a little bit. By doing this, you'll increase your range of motion and make it almost impossible to cheat during the exercise. It forces your deltoids to do all the work, which is exactly what you want. This small adjustment will take your lateral raises to the next level and will lead to some serious shoulder gains. Finally, tip number 5 is all about maximizing the time under tension for your biceps. This is a trick that a lot of people overlook, but it's incredibly effective. When you're doing bicep curls, don't fully lock out your arms at the bottom of the movement. Instead, stop right before you would normally lock out and then perform another rep. This keeps your biceps under constant tension, which is what leads to muscle growth. You're not just doing half reps, you're keeping the tension constant throughout the entire set. This technique works best with lighter weights, like when you're doing concentration curls or cable curls. It may be hard to do with heavier weights, but trust me, if you can manage to incorporate this technique into your bicep exercises, you'll feel the difference immediately. These are the 5 secret tips that will help you maximize your muscle growth and take your workouts to new heights. Incorporate them into your routine, and you'll start seeing results that you never thought possible. Don't just take my word for it. Try them out yourself and feel the difference.